Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another episode here at amazee.com, where we talk to industry leaders, influencers, and experts on the cloud native space, Kubernetes, DevOps, and everything related to those ideas. And we have a lot of these kind of talks recorded and already posted on amazee.com. So if you find this interesting, head over to amazic.com. And you'll find not just these interviews, you'll also find job listings, event coverage, you'll find articles, a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely head over there and check out what we have. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazee. And today I'm going to be joined by Franz Karlsberger, who is the CEO at amazee.io. So this is a cool startup company that we're going to be talking about. So Franz, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Wayne, thank you very much for inviting me and looking forward to the conversation.
All right. So Franz, if you could get us started by just telling us a bit about yourself, your background, what you were up to before Amazee.
So my name is Franz. I'm based in Austria, living here in a very small town in Upper Austria, together with my lovely wife and my two sons. We have two cats, we have two rabbits. So it's really living on the countryside, enjoying it, not to commute actually every day to an office. So that's also the beauty of working for a fully remote company. And I'm now working for amazee.io since 2.5 years. And prior to joining amazee.io in April 2020, I have almost 10-year-long history working for Accenture, a global management and consulting company based in the office in Vienna. And later on, actually, I moved working for Dynatrace. Dynatrace is a market leader in the space of observability. Mm-hmm. And as I've said, now since 2020, working for amazee.io.
All right. So how old is Amazee? When did it start?
So Amazee.io actually goes back until early 2016, 2017. And Amazee.io itself was born out of their sister company. So there's Amazee Labs. Amazee Labs was a web development or is a web development agency headquartered in Switzerland. And during those early days when their developers actually wanted to deploy their application websites onto a hosting infrastructure, they actually run into some issues. And this is where it all started. So this is where two people later on, the team grow, basically said, okay, we can do this better, and we build it in a different way. And that's what you see currently. Actually, what we are talking about today later on, it's the amazee.io ZeroOps platform.
Mm-hmm. All right. And this is probably even before Kubernetes was a thing. 2016 was around the time that Kubernetes just had its GA. So it's pretty early. That's great.
Exactly. It was on the early days. So we saw already, of course, the adoption of containers. It was in the early days of Kubernetes, and we were very early on said, okay, containers are the way forward. This is what the developers will use going forward. And then we also saw, of course, how Kubernetes raised, today we couldn't think about living with it.
Yeah. So, the key word for today's talk, I guess, would be platforms, because I think that's what Amazee solves for. And I would like to get us started on this topic by just having you talk about what is a platform, how would you describe it, how would you define a platform?
So I define a platform as a supporting mechanism for developers to get work done. So this is what, for me, a platform should be capable of. And it should be built in a way that it's easy adaptable. So that's the first thing. So it's, let's say, API first. It should be, if I talk from a platform, it should be also built in a very infrastructure agnostic way. Because what we're seeing out there, we see the rise of the hyperscalers, we see the rise of the cloud, but we also know that there will be companies out there which do pure multi-cloud. We see still companies who are on-prem. And if I want to use a platform which gets adopted, I need to think about those use cases. And therefore, for me, a platform is something which the end user will use on a day-to-day basis, which will make their life easier and which will increase their productivity at the end, but it's really easy to be portable. And that, rounding up everything I said, that's something also we tried to follow in our vision when we created our own ZeroOps platform.
All right. Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But I want to just summarize those, I think, two key ideas that I got from your response. One is you described a platform as a thing that helps developers get their work done more easily. And secondly, you mentioned a platform as it has to be infrastructure agnostic. So those are interesting, and we'll dive a little more into that in a bit. But before that, I want to ask you, if not for a platform, what's the traditional way of managing infrastructure, deploying applications? What's the alternative, the traditional alternative that a platform is trying to improve on or totally revolutionize?
So before actually a platform, what we have seen or what we're currently also seeing a lot is that companies are really trying to teach their developers about the infrastructure, the servers, Kubernetes, and to have them deploy those applications directly on that infrastructure. And that's what we see today. This is what we have seen in the past. But of course, we also see that that approach is actually dangerous, error-prone, and not really efficient. So what we are also seeing is now, of course, companies try to automate the process. So all kind of CI/CD, and it's a complex black box for the developer itself, and they don't know anymore what is really happening and how the things are working, and therefore having something which is more open, which is more understandable for the developers, where they can really think about what they need to do on a day-to-day basis, and the rest will be automated. That's the way forward. And just also seeing, okay, what if someone is not available who is in charge of those more automated tool chains? Okay, you may get stuck, and you also lose time on actually deploying and running your applications.
Yeah, really interesting what you spoke about, which is that companies try to automate different steps in the CI/CD pipeline, but automation can make things worse, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
And so the platform actually fixes it and does probably automation the right way. So when we're thinking about the cloud, you mentioned infrastructure agnostic, and today we're seeing organizations run on multiple different public cloud platforms, and even using a combination of cloud and on-prem hybrid cloud. And so there's services to be provisioned in cloud platforms and even on-prem and all of that. So how does a platform actually, without getting into amazee yet, how would a platform solve for this hybrid cloud problem where there's so much discrepancy across the different platforms? In other words, how would a platform bring consistency to this whole problem of resource provisioning?
What I'm seeing, or what we are seeing in the industry, is having a platform basically helps you to streamline the use of services. So as you have mentioned, you have different kind of hyperscalers. They have all different type of services, and we also see from a demand perspective that not everybody's just buying into one hyperscaler. So they are also maybe using a second one or a third one, or as you said, they are using still on-prem, but a platform would allow them to still streamline on the services. And you see big initiatives actually at the hyperscalers where they also try to invest in that heavily. And now you can even have platforms out there where you still use the service of one hyperscaler where it's even on-prem or on another cloud. And I think that will be a trend which will continue, but it still ties you very closely to those hyperscalers. So we need still have also companies out there who are an alternative to the big players, because the vendor locking or the fear of being a vendor locked in is still out there and is very, very real.
Yeah. So, to press this point a bit more, how does a platform actually help to solve this vendor lock-in problem? So, for example, we've got like AWS and Azure and maybe on-premise as well. And, there's different applications running on these platforms, but they all, for example, need storage, let's say, how do you provision storage consistently across these platforms, and how do you manage them well? Or if you're to talk about networking, how do we ensure that networking is more controlled across these platforms? Could you talk a bit more in detail about how a platform solves these problems across different hyperscalers or on-prem?
So the big question, or the main question, is really, okay, how can you still offer a platform and provide those standardized templates, or where you really, those pre-configured build packs? So I think that's a key for a platform. So the platform still needs to be built in a way that it's very easy to use from a developer perspective. And I think with pre-configured templates ready for production, basically, artifacts you can basically then achieve, because within those artifacts and templates, you basically define those components which you need to run that application in production, and then you deploy them. You just define, what is the underlying infrastructure which this needs to be run on.
All right. So these pre-built build packs, is what I hear you saying. So if I understand right, do these include everything an application needs for it to run? So a developer writes code, chooses one of these build packs, and deploys his code into this build pack, and it's deployed into production automatically without having to tinker much. Is that the idea of a build pack?
That's the idea of a build pack, and that's also something which there are providers out there which are offering this already right now. There are some which are on the market for multiple years, quite successful, and that's also the way on how we built it within our own platform, which we will cover in a couple of minutes. Yes.
All right. So these build packs, are they? You kind of mentioned it, but is it something that the ops team sits and builds, ahead of time, saying that, hey, we're going to have these applications deployed in the coming quarter, so they'll need these build packs? Is that something the ops team does, or is this something where, kind of getting into amazee a bit, is this something that amazee already has some pre-built build packs that you can just pick and choose from?
It's not the ops team who's actually building this within amazee. So we have an own R&D team, which is the so-called Lagoon team. And yes, we have a range of templates which are specially developed to be used on our platform, which our application delivery platform is called Lagoon. And that's a conjunction also with ready pre-prepared Docker images. So some of them are, as you mentioned, ready to go out of the box. So we have templates for some technologies like PHP, Node.js. So going into the website space around Drupal and WordPress, they're ready to use. And then there are some which are more intended as examples. So like Node.js, Python, and Ruby. And then we also have even some which are demonstration applications. So they are at the very early stage. And owing to the nature of some of those applications we support, sometimes these examples are very unopinionated, but some of them, they are built in a very opinionated way. But we are really, as currently, we support a set of technologies, but the aim is, of course, that we are widening this, that there will be a fuller range of templates and examples and languages. But still, there's one main differentiator. The developer doesn't need to use the templates if they don't want to use it. So they can even go in there and customize it based on their application, what they exactly want to do.
All right, really interesting. So who is something like an amazee built for? Is it built for developers too? Is developer the main user, or is it built for ops teams? Are the ops teams primary user?
So the platform itself is built from developers for developers.
Okay.
So we really wanted to provide a platform to make it as easy for an application developer to deploy code into production without actually the entire hassle to think about infrastructure and operations.
Okay.
So that was the main purpose. So it's always really on the developer so that they can create outstanding digital assets, outstanding applications, which are helping them to really increase their productivity, but also that they are adding business value to their own organization. And therefore, if you ask me, it's really, or us, it's really focused on the developer. We all know that there will be more demand for developers in the future. So every business is being a digital business. There will be more applications. There will be a higher demand. And we need to make sure that we make the life of the developer as easy as possible so that they can focus on creating the code. They push the code, but there is a platform and then organizations behind who are helping them, or not helping, but who are running the operation. So do the day two stuff while they are focusing really on the day one stuff.
All right. Interesting. And what comes to my mind when I hear you is about just thinking of this problem from a startup perspective versus an enterprise perspective. And there are obviously different setups. In a startup, it's probably a handful of developers. There's probably no ops team. Developers do everything. And in the enterprise, there's probably, they're quite well staffed with a decent sized ops team. So they function in different ways. I would like to get your opinion on what you've seen, how a startup uses a platform product like amazee, and how does an enterprise use it? How is it different? Because they're both built differently.
So you're actually spot on the startup use case. Those startups, what we are seeing are usually, they're struggling with funds. They need to be very cautious of resources. They really have usually a high pressure from a go-to-market perspective. They want to launch something. And this is also where a platform comes in, because if they can focus their limited resources they are having really on the development stuff, then they are quicker in developing their application and don't really need to necessarily focus about that to build an entire ops team. And therefore, this is where amazee.io and our ZeroOps platform comes into the mix, where we are supporting those startups and say, okay, hey, you don't need to hire 2 or 3 ops people now to make sure you get running in the cloud or in your own data center or in your own infrastructure. This is what we can support you with. And therefore, they really focus on getting the application finalized and get it launched quite quickly. Now, you also mentioned the enterprise use case, and the enterprise use case, that's of course a different story. Usually you have those established teams, you have the developers, you have the ops team, but what we also see is here, basically, due to the fast pace on how technology evolves, it's not always that you really can catch up with the latest and newest what's happening out there. So developers want to use containers, they want to use microservices, they want to leverage Kubernetes. And it's not always that the ops people are already having that skill set within their own organization to support those new type of frameworks and methodologies. And this is where we help large enterprise organizations by actually also bring us our knowledge in, by bringing our platform in, by saying, okay, hey, we help you to jumpstart actually your developers by allowing them to use those modern technologies. We go in there, we support them, and honestly, it's even possible that we train some of their ops people on the new platform so that on the long term, they actually can run it themselves. And then amazee.io is out of the mix again. But it's really about accelerating that knowledge path, accelerating that they know, okay, what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and to have a better understanding that those new technologies are quite complex. And that's one area where we are helping them. And that's also where we have different type of offerings, of course, depending on with which specific use case we are actually dealing with.
I find that quite interesting and encouraging, because a lot of startups seem to focus on building a product and then letting their users figure out how to use it. But I see with amazee, you build a product, but you also seem to put in a lot of thought into kind of training and walking with your customers as they onboard their whole team to use the product.
Yeah.
Could you talk a bit on that? Why is this important? What kind of efforts do you make? And for someone listening to this, why would it be inviting for them to want to try something like amazee, not just for the product, but also for the kind of the customer success, the effort that you put in that perspective?
Yeah, very, very good question. And honestly, customer success is really core to our business. We also only see when you really deliver on what you're promising, then also it will be adopted. And for us, it's not about that we just go in there and be sticky and nobody can rip us out any longer. That's not the way on how we build amazee.io. So that's also a reason why we actually built the platform and the entire company based on open source. So it's also, we really believe in full transparency. We even believe that this should be visible to everyone. So to the development team, to the operations team, and seeing under the hood. So basically allowing them even to run this themselves. Of course, we are on the market now since 6 years. So we have built it, we have a lot of knowledge, but we want to help jumpstart those organizations. And we still believe that there is with Lagoon itself. So Lagoon is at the heart of our ZeroOps platform. Lagoon is the application delivery part. And that part will always be needed. So we see a huge demand currently actually out there for those type of application delivery platforms, because they really allow it to have that focus on the developer. And nevertheless, the ops people then still, we are enabling them. So we do basically upfront sessions with them. We sometimes go into deal structures where we say, okay, we will help you the first 3 to 6 months, but then there will be a transition over, because they want to run, they have their own ops team. We help them actually to get trained on Kubernetes, to look at what is really important when maintaining, monitoring, and securing those clusters. So this is what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then still, as how the application is built, Lagoon could still be in there. They could still leverage then Lagoon as the application delivery part, but we then basically do less of the ZeroOps piece, which is the end-to-end responsibility, also from an operations and infrastructure perspective.
All right. Yeah, really interesting. So, I like the last part, especially where you were talking about ZeroOps as sort of, taking care of the end-to-end. And, I saw on amazee, the website, that, one of the focuses of your product is CDN and WAF. So, if you could talk a bit on that, what kind of problems is this feature of amazee meant to solve, and why is it important?
And maybe let's first, for the audience, clarify what is a CDN. So a CDN is a content delivery network, which refers to a geographically distributed group of servers which work together to provide faster delivery of internet content. So basically, a CDN allows for a quicker transfer of assets, which you need to load internet content. So we talk about HTML pages, JavaScript, style sheets, images, videos. Yeah, think of whatever content which is displayed on the internet. And basically, there are 4 benefits for a CDN. And this is where it gets important, actually. It's to improve the website load time, to reduce the bandwidth costs, to increase the content availability and redundancy, and to improve website security. And that, having said this is at the heart of what amazee.io does. So we really ensure our customers have access to those services to mitigate DDoS attacks and to application level attacks of any key. And we ourselves don't have an own CDN. So we basically are collaborating with Fastly, but it's very tight connected to our ZeroOps platform. So we offer their CDN and their next generation WAF, which is the web application firewall. And in conjunction with our ZeroOps platform so that it really functions as one single solution.
All right. So I see that, networking and security is, the main challenge that these features solve. And that brings me to my next question about, so, deploying an application through a platform is one thing, but then once it's out there in production running, like you said, there's various threats, DDoS and whatnot, and issues that creep up. Sometimes it's not even the external threat, but it's more the internal oversight of, I'd like to ask about just how amazee would handle incidents that come up in production during runtime. What's it like for developers using amazee when they find an incident? What's the kind of process they go through, the experience in resolving those incidents?
Very good question. And yes, security is on top of our mind, and it is will be for the foreseeable future. We hear all the news on security and cybersecurity attacks, and therefore it's really core. What we try to do is really there's a balance, and we try to automate security also as much as possible. So, and what does it mean? So this is only that's a way developers can reach their goals of delivery applications in a defined time. At the same time, we keep it secure. And let me give you two examples. The Kubernetes is all about configuration the pod in a secure manner. And with Lagoon, that's our application, the application developers do not have access to the full pod object to edit it. Instead, Lagoon provides the object with the secure defaults. So there is already that mechanism in place where we try to actually avoid that there will be any issues going forward. Secondly, Lagoon comes with a container registry which automatically scans all the images every 24 hours for security issues. And if an issue is found, then the security team and the developers will be informed automatically. So that's fully automated within the platform. And then they work together on actually fixing that issue.
Nice. And is there any automatic remediation that the platform takes on behalf of the ops? Let's say it's middle of the night and there's a serious threat detected. Is there anything automated to sort of quarantine a part of the system, anything like that?
So there are pieces which are automatically quarantined. So this is happening, as you know, but there's always a team, of course, also standby who immediately actually jumps onto the topic. So we are a fully global team. So we have presence in every geolocation, and therefore we really make sure that happens immediately and gets actually addressed whenever the issue occurs.
Okay, that's wonderful. I want to be winding down, but I want to just ask about, if you could share some examples of, the kind of impact using a platform can have on your whole software delivery. If you could share some, example, something with a number, like, any of your clients, your customers that went from X deployments a day to X number more per day, something on those lines. For those who are watching, and if they're thinking, what can a platform do for me? I think a use case like that would kind of make it more real. If you could share some example like that, it would be great.
So I think there are different aspects. So we briefly talked on the one where there is the one in the startup. So the startup basically, that has an impact bottom line on their balance sheet because they don't need to hold their ops team on doing actually those type of activities. So that's one area. On the other hand side, a platform really allows the way, especially developers now using containers and microservices, that they don't need to invest time and learn Kubernetes. So we all know Kubernetes is awesome. Kubernetes is here to stay, but we also have seen since 2014 onwards that it's getting more complex. And is it really the time and effort worth that my developer now needs to learn Kubernetes? Do they really need to understand how to size a cluster, how to secure a cluster? Or is this something someone else can actually do for them? And this is where this entire approach of a platform comes into the mix. And why do I say platform help? And containerized platforms especially are of a great setup is, let's bring up one of our biggest customers. So that's it's an Australian government organization which provide basically a whole of government content management systems to the entire country. And there, during COVID, and they moved to Lagoon, they moved to amazee.io together with a partner. They are leveraging our platform. And we started 5 years ago. We are now actually in the fifth year where they are running that platform. What we've seen during COVID, we have seen increased spikes on those websites, on those web applications. Whenever the Prime Minister gave basically an announcement on the latest COVID numbers, then everybody within the country was actually jumping onto those websites and checking the latest numbers. So we have seen traffic increase it by 100 times, which without the platform, without having a platform which is fully containerized, which is able to actually scale whenever there are spike events, that would have just been crushed. And then there would have been a lot of frustration actually for the end user, because they would not have gotten the information they were seeking of. And having a platform which is fully containerized, which leverages modern technologies, basically really allowed us to still keep an uptime of 99.9% for all of those web assets during that time when, especially at the early days, when everything was still very unclear. How does COVID evolve? What are the next numbers? What are the new restrictions, basically? And yeah, as I said, we had days where we had 100, 200 times more traffic on the platform without any single performance or scalability issue. And this is what I think platforms allow modern organizations, that they can really deal with those high traffic events. That's very important for every business out there. So just imagine a new retailer is just doing a new campaign, and basically the website or the web application will crush under the load. That would be a very disappointing result for that retailer, because okay, now all the money they spent into the marketing campaign, they can't really foster because the website is down.
Yeah, that's a really interesting use case that you mentioned. And talking about scale, I want to ask, does amazee also look for opportunities to save on your cloud bill? So for example, at scale, when you have those seasonal peaks in traffic, are there any opportunities that amazee looks for to sort of maybe use some lesser expensive instances, for example, anything on those lines?
So it's definitely something which we are very cautious and keen to evolve. So just one recent example is actually that we had one customer who was already on reserved instances. So there was already a benefit, of course, on cost savings. But we also saw within that customer that there are two different use cases. So there's one use case where they have production sites running, and then we had one where we actually had development sites running. And we basically said, okay, hey, why do the development sites also need to run on reserve instance? Can't we use just spot instances for that case? Because the development side have a much lesser uptime requirement. And therefore, we discussed it with the end customer. We just said, hey, let's try this. And that resulted basically, of course, also in the cost reduction from an infrastructure point of view.
Awesome. And so finally, last question about amazee. How does the amazee pricing work? What does a customer pay for? How does it scale up and down?
So very, very good question. And from it, we have basically two pricing models, and it depends actually on what you're using. So and both are pay as you go. So our main offering, which is the ZeroOps dedicated cloud. So that's the way where your application is running in your own cloud environment. So this is where you bring the infrastructure. You bring it either from one of those hyperscalers or on-prem. We manage, monitor, maintain, and secure all your Kubernetes clusters with our application delivery platform exclusively for you in your environment, which allows, of course, full data sovereignty, full flexibility. And in that case, our pricing works that we charge based on the number of nodes amazee.io needs to manage end to end. So that's the ZeroOps dedicated cloud. And then we have the ZeroOps cloud offering. So that's the scenario where your application is running in our cloud clusters. The amazee.io itself also holds the cloud clusters. We are currently running on AWS and GCP. We have availability in 7 regions globally. So really also, again, here spanning from APAC over EMEA to the US. And there we are charged based on the hours your environments for the projects are available. And then also for the traffic, which is actually, we charge by the traffic. So depending on the hits, and the hits we have defined as the request to our infrastructure. And over here, it's very transparent. It's really pay as you go. We don't want to tie you into, okay, this is now your full commitment. And if you don't use it, you lose it. It's more about, we really want to say, okay, be fair enough and say, okay, if this is the traffic you're generating on our infrastructure, okay, this is what we're also charging you for. And of course, everything comes wrapped up into access to our support team, because we also believe having a very direct relationship to our customers. So we use Slack basically in our conversation, so that's not a complex ticketing system where you may need to go into and file something, and within 48 hours, you may or may not get an answer from your provider. We really have direct Slack conversations with every one of our customers. We try to solve the issues the questions very unbureaucratic and direct. And yeah, that's which helped us actually to grow as a company and to keep that customer relationship.
That's awesome. What I really like is it's really approachable. Someone is listening. It's not as daunting, to get started. And so on that note, how does someone get started with Amazee? What do they do as a first step to try it out, maybe?
So the easiest way is, of course, go to www.amazee.io, click the button, get started, get in contact with us. And from there, someone within our team will reach out very quickly. And as soon as we know, okay, what is your use case, we basically will provide you access to an environment. And then, you can experience actually Lagoon, our application delivery platform, and how it works actually, and for your own specific use case.
All right. So everyone watching, if you are convinced by what you heard today from Franz about the need and the importance of a platform when you're working with the cloud and Kubernetes, definitely head over to amazee.io, the website, and get in touch to know more. Check out what they're doing with their product Lagoon, and speak to one of their reps. They seem like a company that's very focused on having conversations with those who are interested in working with them. So, I would encourage you to get in touch with them and definitely give this a try. It sounds like a great option for startups who don't want to deal with an ops team and just want to have their developers, but also for enterprises who have an ops team but want to be able to free up their ops team's time to work on better stuff than the basics. So it's really a cool conversation we just had with Franz. So Franz, before you go, just a couple of questions to get to know you better. Your alternate career, if not for your job in tech.
My alternate career. So interesting, when you have always these friendship books in your kindergarten on your early days. I once wrote in there, I want to be a banker. And I have no idea why I wanted to be a banker. Maybe this was something I found fancy growing up in a small village. But if you ask me today, I really love architecture. So I love to travel with my family. We are loving to stroll through cities. I've lived in Vienna for 15 years almost. That's beautiful architecture, which you can study. And this is still something which I'm really, really fascinated about. Also from an looking backwards way on how basically those things, or in the old days, someone was able to build those great buildings, but also nowadays in modern architecture. I really like the futuristic stuff as well on that profession.
Really cool. Wow, you have a lot of interests. I see you have a bunch of medals hanging behind you. So I want to ask, could you tell us one of those medals that you're most proud of? What's it for? Good
catch. So the this one is basically the one which I'm most proud of just recently, because that's basically the 6-star finisher major marathon medal. That's a medal you're getting when you finalize or when you finish all 6 majors. So New York,
Wow.
Boston, Chicago, Berlin, Tokyo, and London. And I was fortunate enough actually to finish the London Marathon 2 weeks ago. And yeah, I'm really proud of that one. And it was a very nice experience.
Amazing, amazing. Wow, that's some achievement. The top myth about being CEO.
The top myth about that, I think the biggest myth is that you need to know everything. So
Okay.
honestly, I don't think you need to know everything. So I
Okay.
think you really need to know those things which are really relevant and which need your immediate attention. And I think another second myth, usually you are not, there's the perception that you need to be the smartest person in the room. I'm definitely never the smartest person in the room when I'm dealing with my team. And that has one reason, because they are the smartest people and I can learn from them as well. And then we jointly actually make those decisions. And I think that having learned that and seeing this really only allows you to grow as a company, to grow as a team, and have a great culture.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah, it totally takes the stress off it when you think of it that way. That's great. What was the last thing you Googled?
It relates back actually to the marathon thingy, because
Okay.
now, as having done the 6 big ones, I'm actually looking about I'm still in this runner's high, and I'm still
Okay.
looking to where's the next one. And I was actually Googling what are the best marathons in Europe, and yeah, got a bunch of results. And yeah, in the next couple of days, I may check out some of those cities, check out some of those courses, and may decide if I'm doing a marathon again.
All right. Wow. Never stop running. Your favorite tech blog or website or writer that you follow the most?
It's a good question. Here, it's really not one writer I'm following, so one specific blogs. What
Okay.
really helps me to stay on the top of the curve is visiting different websites and get news from like TechCrunch, the news stack, of course, very popular also within the Kubernetes ecosystem. And yeah, I need to admit also Twitter, of course, and Tech Twitter, the Tech Twitter bubble basically helps me to stay on top on what's going on in the industry.
All right, awesome. Yeah, that's a cool place. Yeah, so where do our viewers connect with you online?
Yeah, the easiest way, go to LinkedIn, check out my profile. It's Franz Karlsberger, just type it in there, or reach out on Twitter. There it's F Karlsberger. So it's the easiest way actually to get connected. And these are the 2 platforms I'm only using. So yeah, if you want to get connected, yeah, please try one of those 2.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Franz. It was a pleasure talking to you. Enjoyed our conversation, and thanks for all of the insightful ideas you shared in your responses. Really appreciate it. I'm sure our viewers have taken back a lot with them. So thanks a lot for joining us.
Twain, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And for our viewers, a reminder, if you like what you just heard, head over to amazic.com, amazic.com, and check out all of the other stuff we have as well, similar to this. I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting, cool stuff there. So until our next talk, thanks and see you. Bye-bye.